Good afternoon. Okay, so today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some instructional strategies for highly effective teachers and for a highly effective classroom. Why is this important? These strategies will help with your domain 1, 2, and 3 appraisal. That's your high expectations for student learnings, lesson plans. We'll have some of these hopefully strategies embedded in them, and then a high quality question and discussion techniques. All right, so the first one we're going to talk about is collaborative learning, and that is what children can, and I really love this quote by Vygotsky, if you want to go way back to our training in school, it's what children can do together today, they can do alone tomorrow. So it's kind of back with that, give a man a fish, he eats for a day, teach him to fish, he eats for the rest of his life. It's that kind of thing, and I think that that's something that we really, and especially based on what we've just heard in our faculty meeting, it's important because we're giving them the foundational skills that they need to work together and be productive later in life. All right, so why should I use collaborative, that's supposed to say cooperative learning in my classroom? One, and it goes with a huge part of our big initiative within the school this year, which is increasing engagement so that we are increasing achievement, right? So the first one is student motivation, academic engagement, self-esteem, and then it'll affect a student's attitude towards their subject area. Those kids who really hate reading, well, they might not hate math, but they don't like coming to school because they hate reading. So if we can change that perspective, then they might not hate coming to school or hate learning. And then it also reduces isolation. It's just me, I can't do that. No, if we're working together, if we're collaborating, it's not just on one student to be successful. We're all getting there together. And then finally, achievement. Cooperative learning has been proven to positively affect student achievement. All right, so how does it work? These are basically just the big bullet points. If you wanted to look up Marzano and you wanted to look up what cooperative learning are, these are them. So the first is positive interdependence. Students work as a cohesive group to achieve a shared outcome. Some of those groups, what they should look like is they should be heterogeneous. They should be high achieving versus low achieving students. They should be mixed race if possible, mixed gender. It should be heterogeneous, and it should be rotating, right? We don't want them to be stagnant. We want to build an entire culture within our classroom, and the way that we're going to do that, we can do that through cooperative learning, and we can do that through mixing up the groups. We promote interaction, so that kind of goes with what I just said. And interpersonal and social skills, that's something that a lot of our kids struggle with. My social skills might be different than how somebody else is raised in their house. That could be cultural, that could just be how old my parents are. Like, a lot of that depends. So sometimes we don't get along, or I don't understand where you're coming from, and this helps. It also is a really good way to teach how to be understanding if somebody has a different background or a different viewpoint. How to listen to that viewpoint and move on. It does hold them accountable. I know that that's been a lot of questions about cooperative learning. People are worried that one person in the group is going to do all of the work. If it's done correctly, no, each student is accountable. And then finally, it improves, again, it's group processes. We can do better together. If we put our heads together, we can get there. We can even get there faster than we could if I just did it by myself. All right, some examples would be Think, Pair, Share, Round Robin, Jigsaw, Rally Coach. I know that Ms. Slaughter does a lot of cooperative learning. Ms. Slaughter, what is one strategy that you use the most in your classroom?
Probably Round Robin.
Probably Round Robin.
Stand up, hand up, pair up a lot.
Okay, and how does that help your classroom?
Definitely social skills.
Definitely social skills.
Respectful communication. And
right.
Learning to acknowledge, even though you know this person, I still want you to say thank you and please to them, kinds of things. And I think it allows them to teach the other person so that I know that they have really good, solid foundation on what they know. I
See,
that's the biggest benefit for me.
and that's great. And again, you're building that class culture again. It's huge. You might have to stand up, pair up with somebody that you don't normally talk to every single day. That's not a bad thing. All right, any questions about cooperative learning? All right, the second one, and I think that this is really important, especially for some of our lower performing students. We're reinforcing effort. Knowing the relationship between effort and achievement empowers students to being active participants in their learning. So even if the effort is minimal, right, or not minimal, excuse me, even if the achievement is minimal, but I knew that they were working incredibly hard to make that much of a move, I need to recognize that. I need to say, good job. I need to be even better than saying good job. I need to be a little bit more explicit, right? Just saying good job, or a pat on the back, that's tangible and that's right there in the moment, but something that is really gonna last with that student and is really gonna empower that student would be the type of reinforcement that would stick with them. Is we would need explicitly teach students about the importance of effort. Have students keep track of their own achievement. I know a lot of you guys keep data walls and have students have data notebooks. And then that way they're able to set their own goals if they're maybe below grade level. And also personalize the recognition. Sometimes recognition works for a student who, let's say, is an outgoing person and they need it in a big classroom, right? Oh, thank you so much, Jane. You did such a good job. I love the way that you used a complete sentence to answer that question. Well, that might not work for some people, right? I might have to go get a student to the side and say, you know what, I noticed and I looked at your data, and it doesn't even need to be the teacher, right? If you know that the effort, recognizing the effort is gonna come better from somebody else, do that, but also build it and embed it within your classroom. And know your students, right? That's another big part of it. It's knowing your students and knowing how to praise and how to provide that recognition. Use the pause, prompts, praise strategy, and then use concrete symbols of recognition. So for some kids, it could be a token, right? Or I know that Miss Boughton uses brag tags when her students do a really good job. And they get to wear the brag tag around the classroom, and that's that's obvious, right? That's something we can all see. That's something somebody might want to say, oh, I want to do that. Now that might work better in a primary level than it does in intermediate. Maybe in intermediate, they need their picture on a wall, right? Or they need a special job for the day. Or for me, I used to, if they did what I asked and I was recognizing how hard they worked, they could sit in my teacher chair at my small group table. And for whatever reason, that was it. That's what they needed. Some examples of tracking the relationship between effort and achievement. It's like a rubric. This is one from the textbook, Classroom Instruction That Works, and it introduces a topic, and it kind of helps them because you're not just saying you did a good job on this or you didn't, right? It's not one big grade. It's breaking it up into separate different sections, and you're saying you did really well here. Here's where you could use a little bit of work, and let me tell you how. And that, so this is an example of a data wall. What I kind of like about this one is that it's recognizing effort, but it's actually recognizing the teacher's effort. So it's a teacher data wall, and we need motivation too. And they're tracking, I know you can't really see it as hard, but it's all of middle school, and it's tracking ELA scores and tracking math scores. And it's their version of a data wall that they have during their data chats. So something that I kind of already hit on with recognizing effort is providing feedback. When you recognize that effort, you need to provide feedback. And students, when they get feedback, and it's positive and it's timely, it can positively impact your classroom and their learning and their experience here at school. I liked these. I thought they were kind of cute. The first one's a Dilbert. I'm a bit of a nerd, so that works for me. One guy says, I got a text message from our boss. It says, keep up the WRK work. What does that mean? you just got your annual performance review. Well, great. Keep up the work. Was it good? Could I do better? What? I didn't do much, so maybe I can continue to not do much. And then the bottom one is a dog saying, I'm going to need more specific feedback on my formative assessments, and he's holding a bad dog sign. And I think that that's one of the places where I know that that was my biggest struggle, and where I didn't do, if I think reflectively, I didn't give them like written feedback, maybe necessarily on their tests. You know, I didn't provide that. We would work small group, and I would talk about how they got the answer wrong, why they got it wrong, and provide that feedback. But I use that more as like an instructional strategy, less as this part of a strategy, which is I'm giving you feedback right now. Here it is. And then, so what should it look like? Feedback, it should address what is correct, and then not just say, good job, you got that right. We need to elaborate on why it was correct. So again, we're modeling for everybody else in the classroom. It needs to be timely. I know it's so hard in a classroom when there's so much going on, to provide timely feedback and say, you know what, just to stop what you're doing and recognize that kid, right? Or say, you know what, I love the way that you were able to answer that in a complete sentence, and not just that you gave me 3 details. And then you want to always provide feedback that is specific and that the student is currently working on, right? If you're working on main idea and you're working on details, and the student maybe got the main idea but didn't really understand where the details were, or understood the details but is having a harder idea summarizing, right? That's the big one that I noticed. We're able to pick out details, but trying to summarize it and give you the main idea for whatever reason, that is more difficult. So modeling your feedback based on that, and then criterion based, a lot of that is rubric. When you think about criterion based, think rubrics. Think especially your writing rubrics, which is what I have next. And then you need to engage your students in the feedback process. It shouldn't just be one-sided. Okay, so you got a 1 in mechanics. Why do you think that you got a 1 in, well, a 1 in mechanics looks like this. Why do you think you got a level 1 in mechanics? Okay, I understand that. Let's dialogue. How can you do better next time? So we're not just, okay, here's your writing score. I have to move on to the next subject. Again, it's time consuming and it is a process, but it is something that I think really will make a difference in your students' performance. Here's another example. I like this one because it's a graphic organizer for self and peer feedback. And again, I know a lot of you guys have anchor charts that say, like I used to always have question stems because I taught ESE, and so my students had a hard time starting a sentence, so they would need a question stem, and then they could keep going, and then I could ask my my higher order questions, but it was just getting started. That was a hard thing. Some of us have a hard time having, saying nice things about each other, and then modeling that, and then having those anchor charts that say, this is okay, this is how you can start a feedback conversation. It's not okay to say it was just bad. 4th grade, I'm thinking about you. All right, and so that is it for the strategies that we're covering today. Do you guys have any questions? All right, thank you very much.